I didn't know a body could make a sound like that, like glass stress fracturing under a slow, unrelenting thumb, until I heard my wife laugh for someone who wasn't me. It wasn't just a laugh, it was a confession. A soft, breathy ribbon of sound that didn't belong in our life, in our kitchen, over our battered oak table, under the crooked ceiling fan that rattled when the AC kicked on. It cut clean through whatever illusions I had left and left me staring at a man's shadow, reflected in the glass of our back door. His name wasn't on a business card like a respectable professional. It was printed in ink on a line of class schedules taped to the corkboard near the check-in desk at Sable Harbor Wellness Collective. Atlas Core reset with Dr. Leon Hale, somatic release, guided realignment. Tuesday and Thursday evenings, 7:30 9 p.m. My wife Mia swore the first class unlocked her diaphragm and gave her breath back. She came home barefoot, cheeks flushed, eyes glossy in a way a person might call holy if they'd never seen a woman stifle tears for years, then suddenly remember how to breathe. It had started innocently enough, if slow-burning disaster can be described that way. She complained about her shoulders, her posture, the way working doubled shifts at the dental clinic made her feel like a person really was only as sturdy as her spine. I told her to go. I paid the sign-up fee. I joked about her becoming a yoga teacher who abandoned me for kombucha and handstands. She smiled and kissed my cheek and promised me this was just for stress. But by week 3, the promises had a new doctrine. By week 5, she had a vocabulary that made our house feel like a relic. By week 7, she was staying late to process with Leon and a small, private feedback circle, a phrase that sounded more like an altar than a cooldown. At first, the changes felt like spring. She slept deeper. She ate oranges over the sink and let the juice run down her wrists and laughed about it. She started humming again and wearing her hair down. She bought linen pants that whispered when she walked. She told me my shoulders were closed and my hips were guarded, and for a week straight we sat cross-legged on the living room rug and breathed together while she counted in and out, eyes closed, a soft smile on her lips like the world was finally opening its palms to us. Then came the recalibrations. She outgrew coffee and began making mushroom tonics. She replaced our leftover plastic containers with hand-thrown ceramic bowls stamped with fingerprints that didn't belong to us. She set boundaries I didn't know needed setting. No discussing work stress. After 8 p.m., no touch without an invitation. No jokes about her teacher's name. No asking where the extra $100 had gone because healing has a cost when the culture you live in profits from your pain. Leon became a first name we used in our house, like weather. Did you see the sky? Did Leon say anything about your pinched psoas? When I asked her what exactly he did in those feedback circles, she said, he listens like he hasn't already decided who I am. She said it without looking at me. The words were a scalpel. The room jellied around me. I started noticing the small betrayals first. The late-night texts, the soft chime of her phone while she brushed her teeth, her smile moving somewhere I couldn't follow. The way she said goodnight and left her warmth in the kitchen instead of the bed. The way she wore perfume to class and left without saying goodbye to me in the mornings. The way she stopped asking me about the break room, guys at my plant who snuck off to smoke behind the dumpsters and laughed like their lungs weren't in the balance. I told myself I wouldn't be the man who snoops. I told myself trust doesn't mean pretending not to see smoke. One night, after her class ran late, I stepped into the bathroom and saw a smear of pale clay across her collarbone, a thumbprint maybe, the color of wet slate. When she saw me looking, she said they had an exercise with body paint to map tension stories. She didn't invite me to laugh with her about it, the way she would have once she went to bed. The house thrummed with the electricity of something unnamed. Leon Hale had a voice like velvet with a grain of sand in it. I know because I watched his breathy, sunlit videos at 2 a.m. while our bedroom fan chopped the darkness into ribbons. He wasn't a doctor, not really. He was a chiropractor who rebranded, a somatic shepherd who promised to herd your nervous system back into the pasture. The body remembers even when the mind refuses. Release your bracing. Return to your truer blueprint. He had a jaw you could set clocks by and tendons that made their own map beneath his skin. He smiled at the camera like he forgave you for not forgiving yourself. I sat there and felt something rotten take root low in my gut. 2 weeks later, Mia told me she was joining the inner rings. It sounded cultish and shiny at once, tiered mentorship, smaller circles, one-on-one alignment consults. It was expensive. We can afford it, she said, standing by the doorway with her shoes already on. We can't afford not to if I'm going to keep going. The sentence didn't have room for me in it. I did the math in my head and felt my throat go tight. I said okay anyway. I'd say okay to worse things soon. The night I followed her, the sky had the color of healing bruises. I drove 2 cars back, a coward and a husband, or maybe those are the same thing when loves become a mirror you can't keep looking into. She parked in front of Sable Harbor, its glass facade glowing with amber lamps. A sign promised open floor, closed doors are trauma. She went in. I waited 10 minutes, 20. Then I saw the backlight flare in a second-story window, a room half occluded by bamboo screens. A shadow crossed the shade, tall, shoulders like a promise kept to the gym, a palm pressed gently to the air as if blessing it. He moved toward someone. The shade bowed. The shape of two bodies blurred, softened, narrowed to one silhouette, then two again. My hand was shaking on the steering wheel. I have never been religious, but I prayed, not for her to be innocent, for me not to be a fool. When she came out, she was alone. Her hair was up, knuckles tucked inside her sleeves like she'd pulled her hands in from the cold. She didn't see me. She drove home and snuck into bed like quiet could clean sin. I watched the ceiling. I counted the rotations of the fan. If I slept, it wasn't sleep, it was a blackout. She asked to go to the coast that weekend, just for a day, she said. A reset. We drove with the windows down, her fingers reaching out to press the air, searching for atmospheres the way you test a bruise. She held my hand on the highway as if she remembered, briefly, what it was for. On the beach, we walked until the lighthouse cut the dusk. She stopped, turned, and looked at me as the light swept over us. I don't want us to lie to each other anymore, she said, and suddenly the world was very quiet. I didn't plan this, but I think I'm waking up, and I can't unwake just because it hurts you. The wave broke and pulled foam like frayed lace around my ankles. I heard gulls, I heard my own breath snagging on a bone I didn't have a name for. Is there someone? I asked, the question old as dust and still unsayable. She closed her eyes. She nodded. The lighthouse kept sweeping. I thought about all the ways people leave each other. I didn't know the worst one was while staying, for months in the same bed. When she said his name, the syllables sounded expensive. Leon, the sound of a lock turning. The sound of a bruise pressed. The sound of a new doctrine being sworn. People say heartbreak is loud. It isn't. It's the hum of fluorescent lights at 11 p.m. when the grocery store is almost empty. It's the sound of a cartwheel whispering because it's stuck. It's the cashier asking paper or plastic while the aisles swim, and a person wonders how to explain that all these bright things have suddenly gone gray. I wouldn't have remembered the groceries except the next morning. Mia poured oat milk into her coffee and didn't drink it. And later, I found the bottle sweating on the counter, like even it couldn't believe how far from the cow we'd come. We tried therapy, not with Leon. She said it wouldn't be clean to ask him to mediate, but with a woman named Cordelia who had a room full of salt lamps and a voice that could fold paper without creasing it. We have to tell the truth without weaponizing it, she said. We have to stop naming each other's motives and start naming our own bodies. I tried to explain to Cordelia that my body felt like a furnace I'd shoved a sofa into. Mia's body apparently had become a crystal singing bowl where sound turned into light. I drank 3 cups of water and felt like an aquarium. The second session, Mia owned her shadow, a phrase I wanted to hate but couldn't because I watched her hands as she spoke, how they trembled, how they tried to build a bridge out of air. She said she'd felt invisible. She said she'd been dying a death that didn't leave any bruises. She said she'd only wanted someone to tell her she wasn't unlovable for wanting more. And then she met a man whose entire job was telling people their bodies were worth hearing. I didn't mean for this to happen, she added, and the worst part was that I believed her. Wanting is honest until it isn't, and then it becomes a weapon so gentle you don't know you've been stabbed. We set boundaries like wildflowers around a grave. She would end the emotional involvement with Leon. She would leave the inner rings. She would tell him she was recommitting to her marriage. I would stop using sarcasm as a life raft. I would go to a somatics intro workshop so I could stop sneering at words I didn't understand. We ate pasta on the floor because we'd sold the living room couch to pay for her last month of classes and then never picked a new one. We'll be okay, she said, but the sentence tripped and fell somewhere between her chest and her mouth. The next afternoon, I got a notification from our credit card app. A charge at Sable Harbor for $642, one-on-one recalibration series. The app let me tap to see the descriptor. It felt like tapping the shark's nose. I sat in my car outside the plant, phone hot in my hand, the air thick with the smell of coolant and old coffee. I texted her. Are we doing this? Are we lying with better vocabulary now? She wrote, it's not like that. It's complicated. He's helping me exit the inner rings in a way that's safe. When I got home, the kitchen light was off. Mia sat at the table with her elbows on the wood, fingers steepled, eyes wrecked. You can yell, she said. Maybe you should. I wanted to laugh and throw something and kneel and beg and sleep for a week. Instead, I took a chair, turned it around, and sat with my chest against the back, like a teenage counselor pretending to be approachable. What happens in recalibration? I asked. You look at each other's pupils and breathe. She flinched, not because I was wrong, but because I'd learned how to aim. It's talking, she said, and some assisted postural work, and yes, breath. But it's not what you think. I thought it was intimacy for rent. I thought it was a temple where vows go to be rewritten in a language no one outside the circle can translate. I'll cancel, she whispered. I'll call him now. She pulled out her phone. It rang once, twice. Then someone picked up. I could hear his voice through the receiver, low and warm, saying her name like it was a thing one could own. She hung up without speaking. He's here, she said, downstairs in his car. I don't remember deciding to go outside. I remember the way night smelled, cut lawn and heat baked into brick. I remember the way his car idled like a big dog breathing through its mouth. The windows were down. He was exactly as he looked on video, which is to say, daunting and curated. You must be Evan, he said, like we were men at a networking event. He stepped out of the car with grace that suggested rehearsal. I'm here to make sure Mia is supported as she exits. I would never force. You will not come back to this building, I said, and the relief in my chest at hearing my own voice be simple felt like finally washing something very dirty from my hands. You will not contact her except through a professional we both agree on, and you will refund anything that clears tonight. He smiled, the patron saint of overlap. I don't engage with threats, he said calmly, only with consent. He gestured to the building. If Mia asks me to leave, I leave. Mia had come to the doorway, arms wrapped around her middle like she could hold herself together by force. Leon, she said, and even now, even then, it had the softness of an apology baked into it. I can't do this, not like this, I have to stop. He blinked once. Then he did something with his face that should be taught in a masterclass on power. He arranged his expression into concern. I want you to feel safe enough to choose truth, he said, if you're being coerced. I took a step forward I didn't plan. He saw it, and his weight shifted back, tiny but there, and the movement transformed the air between us into something that had a temperature and a name. Don't, Mia said. Her hand on my arm was lightning that chose a tree. Evan, please. Leon left. He did it like he was doing us a favor. I stood in the doorway until his taillights were a bruise on the dark. Mia and I sat on the kitchen floor because it was the only surface that didn't feel haunted. We didn't touch. Her breath sounded like someone learning to play a flute. If you can't forgive me, she said, I'll understand. I didn't know forgiveness was a bandage you apply while the knife is still in. I don't know what I can do, I answered, but I know what I won't do. I won't be erased inside my own life. We agreed to a trial separation. It felt so tidy I wanted to throw up. She packed a bag with soft clothes and a plant cutting in a jar and left for her sisters. I stood in our bedroom and stared at the box springs. Dust made a small galaxy under the bed. I lay down in the middle of the mattress like a compass needle forced north by a magnet I didn't choose. The ceiling fan spun and did not move the air. On day 3, I found the group. 2 men in a comment thread under one of Leon's videos. Anyone else have a wife in the inner rings? One wrote, DM me, this is not just yoga. The thread was 6 months old. I messaged anyway. The reply came fast. Welcome to the church, it read. We've been waiting. The group called itself the Trestle because we keep things from collapsing. It was a private chat of 7 men and 2 women who had been folded and refolded by Sable Harbor's inner rings, by Leon's hands, by the sliding language of transformation that made you feel like a coward for wanting to keep your life intact. They weren't conspiracy theorists. They weren't humorless. They had sarcasm like spelunking gear, lights for buried things, rope for descent, patience for the echoes. Marcus went first on a call. His wife had been in deep for a year. I kept hoping it would be Pilates, he said, and then I found the auto debit for $2,900 labeled initiation. He showed us the welcome packet she had hidden on their top shelf behind old tax folders. Photos of circles, testimonials, a non-disclosure to protect the sanctity of participants' process. A bullet list that ached with good intentions. It would have almost been lovely if it hadn't smelled like fog machine. Tanya spoke next, voice tight as wire. She had been in the rings. She left 6 months before our call. They don't call it compliance, she said. They call it willingness. But if you say no, they tell you your no is a trauma pattern wearing a polite hat. She rubbed her forehead. They're not monsters. That's what makes it awful. They're good at parts of it. They give you language so you can stop drowning, and then they sell you the raft. The Trestle had a plan, not vengeance. The word tasted like sugar that makes teeth ache. Accountability, not a fight in a parking lot. A blueprint with paperwork. They had files, screenshots, receipts, testimonials, a spreadsheet color-coded for severity, emotional boundary erosion, financial coercion, professional misrepresentation, sexualized therapeutics. It should have felt like overkill. It felt like breath in a room I hadn't realized was stale. You have to be ethical, Tanya said. We don't smear, we don't invent, we don't humiliate people who bought hope with their own fear. But we do put the machine on a table and show how it's built. She had a contact at the licensing board. Another had a connection at a local reporter who had been sniffing around wellness scandals. A third knew a civil attorney who believed sincerely in phrases like unfair trade practices. I didn't think I was the kind of man who prints things and puts them in a manila folder, but 2 weeks later I had one: bank statements. Texts, screenshots of class promos archived in the Wayback Machine after they'd been quietly edited. A photo of a consent form, where the font changed in the last paragraph like it had been added after the document's design, the text extending permissions into zones no body should cede to an out-of-pocket healer. I called Mia. I told her what I was doing. "Don't," she said immediately, fear cracking the veneer of her new voice. "Please, Evan, you don't know what you're touching. There are good people there." I told her I believed her. I told her being good at breathwork didn't mean you had license to build an economy out of other people's grief. "If you do this," she said, "Leon will make me the villain. He'll say I weaponized you." The sentence put iron in my spine. "Then don't give him the lines," I said. "Come with me, tell the truth yourself." She didn't agree. She didn't hang up. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I'm ashamed," I said. "Me too. Shame is a room with 2 chairs when you put another one in it." The day we went to Sable Harbor, we wore our nicest clothes like armor. The lobby smelled like cedar and a careful idea of heaven. Soft bells trembled somewhere invisible. We asked to see the director, a woman named Sira who had hair like the kind of fire you put in catalogs. She sat us down and offered tea. "This feels adversarial," she said, "and that makes me sad." I slid the folder across the glass table and watched her face go through stages of grief. Denial sat the longest. Tanya walked in 10 minutes later. Sira's lips thinned. "If this is a coordinated attack, we won't hesitate to protect our community," Sira warned. "I understand," Tanya said. "Community that survives scrutiny is resilient. Community that doesn't is a business model." We didn't yell. We named things we could prove. We pointed to intake forms that asked questions beyond their training. We spoke about boundaries breached while participants were dissociated. We cited billings for medical-sounding packages used in non-medical ways. We detailed the romantic entanglements that blurred power to translucence. We mentioned the reporter's name. We made clear that people would be treated as witnesses, not fuel. Sira cried, not manipulative tears, just human ones. She wasn't Leon. She was a person who believed she was doing something kind inside a machine that rewarded more and more porousness. "He goes too far," she said finally, voice shaking. "I've told him. He says it's where the breakthroughs live." She pulled a thumb and forefinger together like she could pluck a word from the air. "We are supposed to close the door if touch feels charged." She didn't finish. She didn't have to. We left Sable Harbor with a promise that sounded like a day in court. We sent the packet to the board and the reporter the same afternoon. The article didn't run right away. This isn't a movie. It took time, a week, then 2, then a call from a blocked number. I almost didn't answer. "You think you're a hero?" Leon asked. No warmth now. The velvet burned off. "You're a small man performing righteousness because you couldn't hold your wife." Something in me that used to flinch did not. "Small men don't build bridges," I said. "They kick them. You can keep calling yourself a doctor in a dim room. I'm going to keep turning lights on." The silence that followed was short and surgical. He hung up. The story ran on a Tuesday. The headline was sober. The comments weren't. Women from 3 cities away recognized the language, the forms, the soft push. The board sent a letter. An investigation opened. Sable Harbor posted a statement about clarifying boundaries and updating training. Leon posted a video in a field at golden hour about witch hunts. His followers sobbed in the chat. "They always take down the men who help women." The algorithm did what algorithms do. It spooled sorrow into engagement. I waited for the impact and didn't feel triumph when it hit. Relief is quiet. Accountability is slow. Mia texted me a screenshot of the video. "He's lying to them," she wrote, "to himself." I asked where she was. She said, "In my car, outside work, shaking." I asked if she wanted me to come. She said yes without a clever word layered over it. She looked small in the passenger seat, knees drawn up, hands cold. "I told him I'm giving my statement," she said. "He told me my attachment to you is a dead animal I keep in the house. He said we mistake trauma for truth because truth scares us." Her laugh was glass cracking. "God, he's good." I put the heater on her feet. I didn't touch her until she reached for my hand. The board set a preliminary hearing date. Sable Harbor suspended touch-based one-on-ones. The inner rings paused with a retreat inward. The trestle had a celebration where no one smiled too hard. Tanya toasted with ginger ale. "May good work survive scrutiny," she said, "and may predators call each other gurus until the money runs out." The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I walked the apartment, an astronaut in his own life. I found a note on the counter from Mia, written in the slanted hand. "I first fell in love with over a diner receipt. I don't know who I am without wanting. But I remember who I was when I wanted you. I touched the pen grooves like braille. The wanting did not erase the wound. The note did not erase the months. But I felt something loosen, a knot I'd been feeding like a pet. At the hearing, Sierra sat on the left with counsel. Leon sat on the right, alone, magnificent in a way that always made you doubt yourself. When he spoke, he said words like nervous system attunement and present moment consent. When Tanya spoke, she described her body like a person, not a project. When Mia spoke, she didn't cry for effect. She cried because she was telling the truth, and truth heats the face. She said she was responsible for her choices, and that choice made inside a power dynamic is not the same as choice in a vacuum. She said she had to rebuild the part of herself that mistook intensity for intimacy. I couldn't stop my eyes from finding Leon's face when she said that. His expression went still in the way of a man swallowing a stone. He kept his eyes lowered. The board asked questions in voices without music. Sierra promised trainings that had teeth, not just taste. We left into afternoon light that felt like it had been scrubbed. There wasn't a verdict yet. That would take weeks, but something had shifted. On the sidewalk, Mia took my hand the way a person decides to stop bracing and just walk. Forgiveness isn't a key that opens a door. It's sand in a shoe that you empty every mile until one day you don't notice the grit anymore. The board's decision came in a letter like every life-altering thing that pretends to be a utility bill. Probationary suspension pending remediation, it read, which is bureaucratic for sit down. Learn how to touch without making it about your loneliness. Sable Harbor went bright with policy. Consent became a sentence with bold fonts and timestamps. The inner rings closed to reimagine. Leon went on hiatus to deepen his practice elsewhere. Elsewhere was a podcast where he said men who fear women's power always turn accountability into spectacle. The episode art was a wheat field. The comments were a hymn. Mia moved back into our apartment on a Sunday when the light found its way under the blinds like a cat. She brought fewer things than she left with. She put the plant cutting on the kitchen sill, now rooted. It's not a declaration, she said, standing awkward in her own home. It's an attempt. We didn't kiss like a movie. We made spaghetti and ate it at the counter and took turns washing. That night we lay on the bed like survivors, palms up, not touching, breathing until the room's temperature agreed to be ordinary. Rebuilding looks stupid from the outside. It's two adults drawing up a schedule for who takes out the trash, so resentment doesn't put on a costume and pretend to be fate. It's a body scan where you stop at your own throat and admit, aloud, that you're afraid to say what you want because you think wanting is a plague you'll spread. It's learning to laugh at the word container without sneering at the people who need one. I started running again, not to escape, but to learn how to continue. I ran along the river at dawn, geese heckling me like they knew what men promise and don't deliver. I kept my phone in my pocket and did not check it. My heart learned how to take a hill without punishment. After a while, I brought Mia with me. We ran at different paces but came home together. Some mornings we didn't talk. Some mornings we did. I thought intensity meant alive, she said once, breathless at the stoplight. But I didn't realize how much quiet is required to hear your life. We went back to therapy with Cordelia, who did not congratulate us, God bless her. She made us map our conflicts like city streets and circle the intersections we kept colliding in. She made us rehearse apologies that didn't have the word, but. She made us forgive ourselves out loud in sentences that sounded clumsy and then, somehow, necessary. Tanya texted me a photo of a sign on Sable Harbor's door, closed for internal realignment. Under it, in Sharpie, a hand had written, about time. The trestle kept meeting monthly, not to keep a fire going against a man we'd redirected, but to make sure we didn't turn into the thing we'd fought under a different name. We told new jokes, we traded recipes. We learned that community is what you do with your hands on a Wednesday when no one is clapping. One evening in September, we got an email from the board. The decision was final. Restrictions made permanent, scopes clarified, supervision required. It wasn't a decapitation. It was a haircut with a ruler. It felt unsatisfying, like all grown outcomes, which is how you know it's not performance. Outcomes, which is how you know it's not performance.